Hello everyone. As we continue this course on the implications of misuse and cybersecurity, the next topic we'll be looking at is data protection. Today, whether we are an organization or an average individual, we all have important data, personal data, such as phone numbers, addresses, documents, photos, that we want to protect from unwanted persons from having them. Some persons would even try to hack into our system so that they can get these personal data. So, whether a threat is deliberate, like for example hacking, or accidental, all methods should be taken to either prevent it from occurring or to minimize its effects. This is where a countermeasure to data theft comes in. A countermeasure is a procedure, either physical, such as some kind of hardware, or logical, like some kind of software that recognizes, reduces, or eliminates a threat. Thus, the term data protection refers to computer users who can protect their data against loss or damage. It also refers to data protection laws, which set down rules about what information can be kept by others about you. Next, we'll be looking at the means a person can use to either create or prevent an attack, and that is surveillance. Computer surveillance involves the use of technology to gather information from the user and from the computer, often without the user's knowledge. Monitoring entrances and exits, together with the methods to identify authorized personnel, is a typical method used to identify a threat. So, on one hand, a person can use surveillance to monitor your data on a computer, but on the other hand, they can monitor persons so that they don't try to get access to these computers. This method of security is employed to protect the physical surroundings, that is, the building and the rooms with computers in them. Some common approaches to physical security includes 1. Closed circuit TV monitors. An example of this is a building having cameras installed at various points, and all camera feed is being directed to a central room somewhere to be monitored by someone. 2. Electronic alarm system. This is where an alarm would sound to notify persons if an unauthorized person is trying to access an area he is not allowed to enter. 3. Computer control locks that check employee badges. To control access to certain rooms or computers, a special lock can be implemented which only opens, for example, when a badge with a special identifier is scanned. 4. Biometric recognition, such as fingerprints, retina scans, and voice to authorize entry to different rooms or buildings. So just like a badge, a person can use his fingerprint, retina, or voice to enter rooms. This can be more secure than a badge since our biometric features are unique. And 5. Access code. Since biometric systems can be costly to implement and run, a company might use a simple access code or password using numbers to enter rooms. However, even though surveillance can be helpful, there are some negative consequences of computer surveillance. These include 1. Loss of privacy for the user. Since someone is monitoring what a person does, they now do not have any privacy to do anything personal on the computer. 2. Lack of security. Because of depending so much on monitoring with cameras, there may not be any persons there physically to stop anyone. 3. Potential misuse of information, possibly for monetary gain. So the same person that is doing the surveillance for the company might actually steal the data and misuse it. 4. Difficulty in determining the source and physical scope of surveillance activities in some organizations. So you may actually be limited in what and where you can record. And lastly, limited measures to prevent computer surveillance. So for example, because some cameras are so small, you may not even notice one being installed and you are being monitored by someone. Therefore, depending on the purpose of the surveillance, it can be used to either create or prevent an attack. Now, there are several techniques for surveillance, and we'll be looking at monitoring with software and monitoring with hardware devices. First, we'll be looking at monitoring with utility software. Now, it is important to understand that all data that passes into and out of a network can be monitored. It can be spied on and sometimes even read by a hacker. This is known as packet sniffing, where a packet is the measure being checked. So, a side note, in networking, the term packet basically refers to our data, whether that be a photo or a document that travels across the network. So these messages or these packets can be monitored using utility software or by using a computer on the network which can observe all packets as they pass through the network. Next, we'll be looking at monitoring with hardware devices. One example is a physical or hardware device called bugs, which are keystroke loggers implanted into a keyboard. This device can record all keystrokes made by the user over a period of time. So as you type in your password or as you type a document, every key that you press on the keyboard is recorded by the keystroke logger. Then, after some time, the device can then be retrieved and the keyed information can be reproduced. Other more sophisticated devices, which can obtain more information, can be inserted into the computer itself. But the disadvantage of hardware devices is that placement and retrieval requires physical entry into the place where the computer is stored, which can be a legal offense and is a violation of privacy without legal authorization. Something else which we need to protect our data from is nature and all its natural disasters. So next, we'll be looking at protection from nature. Our data should also be protected from natural disasters, including the risk of fire, storm damage, dust, and humidity. Most organizations today use fireproof cabinets and safes to keep critical data stored on media such as optical discs, tapes, and microfilm to protect against such hazards. Computer systems should make use of electrical surge protectors to protect computer hardware against electrical surges and spikes. The effect of power outages can be minimized with the use of an uninterruptible power supply, or a UPS. This device, the UPS, contains a battery which supplies equipment with electricity during a power outage so that data can be backed up and a normal shutdown of the hardware can be performed. So say for example, you are typing a document and you haven't saved, then suddenly blackout comes. Because of the cut in electricity, all the data you would have typed is now lost because it wasn't saved. But with a UPS, you can have power to your computer with the battery just long enough so that you can save all of your data and then shut down your computer properly so that all of the data is safe. Next, let's see how we can have protection from theft. Some schools often lock computers to the desk to prevent theft of a system, unit, and peripherals. However, there is still the theft of memory chips, hard drives, CD and DVD drives, printers, inks, and other accessories. To help prevent theft, organizations can limit access to only authorized persons and maintain records and logs of computer usage. So that way, if something goes missing, you can determine who last entered the room or even who last used the device. The next thing we'll be looking at is a very common way in which persons lose their data: computer viruses. So, what is a virus? Well, a computer virus is a program that infects computer files and makes them do something unexpected or damaging. A copy of the virus program is inserted into a computer file, and when the file is used and loaded into memory or RAM, other files become infected. This is because the computer loads all files it needs to work on into the memory or RAM. So when the virus gets into the memory or RAM, it infects the other files. Most of the time, computer users are unaware that a program or file has become infected. If one of the infected files is sent by email or given to other users on a device such as a USB memory stick, then other computers are infected and the virus spreads. Viruses today are an increasing threat to computer systems. In 1986, there was only one known computer virus, but today, hundreds of thousands of new viruses appear every day. There are three main types of viruses, and the first we'll be looking at is those that infect program files. The virus code is attached to program files, and when the file is loaded, or basically when the file is loaded into memory or RAM, the virus is loaded as well. Second, those that infect system or boot files. The boot file is a small program that tells the computer how to load the rest of the operating system. By infecting the boot file, the virus is loaded into memory and is able to run whenever the computer is on. And lastly, macroviruses. These are written in a language associated with an application, such as Microsoft Access. The macrovirus is carried by a database file and is executed when it is opened. Another electronic threat is called a worm, and unlike a virus, it does not require a host program in order to be transmitted. Worms can be transmitted via email and are capable of copying themselves into memory or RAM. Mass mailing worms can create infected email messages and send them to addresses saved on the infected computer. Next, we will look at how we can prevent viruses from infecting our system. One form of protection is virus protection programs, which not only scans a computer's data for harmful viruses, but also protect from and intercept viruses attempted to infect data in system or application software. The best way to protect a computer against viruses is to 1. Install antivirus software. Antivirus software protects the operating system, programs, and files against viruses. It regularly scans the computer for viruses and then removes any viruses that are found. Antivirus software can be set up to automatically check storage devices, internet downloads, and emails for any viruses. Because new viruses are being discovered on a daily basis, leading antivirus software products such as Avast, AVG, and McAfee have antivirus updates automatically downloaded from their websites to keep protection up to date. 2. Turn on program virus protection. Some programs, for example, Microsoft applications, have built-in macro virus protection. When this is the case, make sure that it's turned on or enabled. 3. Try to know the origin of each program or file you use. In the age of the internet, this is very difficult, hence the need for antivirus software. As a rule, beware of free software and software downloaded from the internet. So, one important step you can take is to always ensure you download from websites that you trust. And 4. Never open an email attachment that contains an executable file with an extension exe, com, or vbs, even if you know who sent the email. This is how many viruses are spread. Next, we'll be looking at how we can protect our files and databases. So, what is a database? Well, a database contains the raw data for information. This can include information on customers, employees, and so on. And often, the database in an organization are its lifeblood. Companies therefore cannot afford to lose records. Maintaining several generations of backups as well as archives of all its critical files are advised. The master and backup files should be stored in fireproof safes or preferably in a separate building away from the main computer center. So, an organization would use a remote building or another building so that they can store backup of their important data. Now let us look at what it means to backup and archive and why they are needed. Today, making backups or copies of files is always important. For businesses and other organizations that depend on databases, it is essential. Files can become damaged, corrupted, or even lost, and that is why we need to back up our data. Think of what would happen to travel agents if they could not use a database for booking flights. Persons would not be able to book their flights on time, or to doctors who could not access patients' details, which can be some critical information that is needed to complete a surgery to save a life. So when a database that is used by an organization is damaged, they not only affect the organization, but all who the organization serve. To prevent situations like this from happening, the regular backing up of these files is essential. If a file does become damaged or corrupted, then the files and the data they contain can be restored or recovered from the backup copy and a business can continue as normal. How often backups are made depends on how valuable the information is. Most modern networks have software which automatically performs backup of data to magnetic tape or CDRW. Why magnetic tape or CDRW? Well, that is because they cost less and can store data for quite a number of years. Backups can be performed after each workday, every other day, or as often as deemed necessary. Some backups are also stored in a remote location to protect against disasters such as hurricanes, volcanoes, floods, or earthquakes that would destroy any backups in the immediate vicinity, along with other equipment. Another alternative, called remote data backup, stores backups in cyberspace or online on the internet. Users and companies buy online storage for easier access to data. However, data stored online is prone to deletion if the online storage company goes out of business. So now that we looked at what it means to backup a file, let us look at what it means to archive a file. An archive preserves files that you no longer need on a regular basis. By putting them in an archive, storage space on your hard disk or your network drive can be released for use by current files. Archives can then be extracted if the need arises, usually for reference. For example, an organization may preserve archives of past ledgers, receipts, and tax forms for future reference only. Next, we'll be looking at network and cybersecurity as to what else we can do to protect our data. Companies address cyber threats with encryption or decryption techniques. They encode data before transmission so that it appears unintelligible or unreadable unless it is decrypted using a software key. Users on a network can each be given a username with an individual password. This prevents other users accessing an individual's file, changing program settings, or installing, copying, or deleting software. Other techniques include preventing virus attacks through networks, email, or by sharing secondary storage devices and media. Another way we can protect our data is by copyright, and we'll look at the effects of piracy. Copyright is a name given to the protection in law of the rights of the person responsible for creating such things as text, a piece of music, a painting, or a computer program. The illegal copying and stealing of software costs the software industry millions of dollars a year. A copyright law would make it a criminal offense to be caught copying or stealing software. It would also make it an offense to 1. Copy or distribute software without permission. So, if we do not pay for a paid program, it is illegal to copy that program from one computer to another. 2. Run copyright software that has been bought on 2 or more computers at the same time unless the software agreement or the license allows it. So, most of the time, when you buy a program, it is only meant to be installed on one computer. So, by installing it on more than one, you are reducing the sales of that company. The Intellectual Properties Affairs Office in a country would be responsible for enforcing the law on copyright and campaigning against software piracy. So, what is software piracy? Well, software piracy is the theft of computer programs and the authorized distribution and use of these programs. In the Caribbean, countries are enforcing copyright and privacy laws for music, printed material, and even software. The main types of piracy are 1. Copying software and its packaging to try to make it look like a genuine product. 2. Copying and selling recordable CD-ROMs that contain pirated software. So even copying pirated software from a computer to a flash drive to another computer is illegal. 3. Downloading software from the internet. Just because software can be downloaded from certain sites does not mean that it is free or legal for you to download it. And 4. using software on more computers in a network than the number of computers for which they are software licenses. So if a software licenses 10 computers, it is illegal to install it on the 11th computer. Now, because of all of these activities, many countries have enacted laws with which it is illegal to misuse computers. People found guilty receive a large fine or even a prison sentence. For example, it is illegal to do any of the following. 1. Deliberately plant computer viruses that damage program files and data. 2. Copy computer programs illegally, which is called computer piracy. 3. Hack into a computer with the intention of seeing or altering information. 4. Use a computer to commit crimes or fraud. 4. Use a computer to commit crimes like fraud, for example, to create a fictitious worker and get money paid into this non-existent person's bank account. 5. Use your employer's computer to carry out unauthorized work. Some countries also have legislation that seeks to protect the individual from the potential misuse of personal information. Contents of such legislation include: 1. Information should be used only for the purpose for which it was provided. For example, if a company records a person's name, address, and telephone because they made a purchase, that company should not share that information with other companies that do advertising for similar products. 2. The individual has the right to examine the contents of any personal record representing that individual. One example is actually Facebook, which allows you to see what data they have stored on you. 3. The information must be accurate. Information should be periodically updated to be a true reflection of the individual. 4. Information should not be held for longer than necessary. So if you were given someone's information for just a transaction and it would no longer be needed in the future, it should not be kept for long periods. 5. All measures necessary for ensuring the security of the information against physical and electronic threats should be in place, therefore protecting the data from being stolen or damaged. And lastly, the privacy of the individual should be protected. So in review, whether we are a large organization or just an average individual, we all have important data that we should learn how to protect. This has brought us to the end of data protection, and I would like to thank you for viewing.